Okay, everyone, big news and a little story. So the big news is, as of 3 minutes ago, we have allowed pre-orders on the Exos-3, the red version here. The special red version will be up first, and then the black one. There's the black one, you guys have seen them both. So we are after 3 midnight sessions doing the final voicing. We've kicked off production. We will start 500 pieces a week starting next week, and we will ship them as soon as they're done. So we'll have all the details on that stuff. We've got some reviewer units out. You'll start to see reviews. Some of the labs folks who've been testing may chime in, and we'll get all your questions answered. So all that will be down below. And the story, for those of you who have the patience, I got a little story about the Exos-3. I want to tell it because it tells you something about the Exos-3, but also about Aiwa and the whole point of what we're trying to do. The point, I think, of speakers and headphones and all these audio products generally. So we've been working on a smaller Exos for years, practically since the Exos-9 came out in one form or another. And this really started in earnest a year ago with the kickoff of the design and vendor selection. And even predating the agreement with Japan, we started to use some of the old Aiwa suppliers, which gave us access to resources and attention that we didn't have before, which was really key. And so that's, you start with your configuration and starting point with the drivers and the cabinets and specs and all that kind of stuff. About, I don't know, a little over 5 months ago, we brought this into our first alpha testing. But there have been a lot of changes since then, details, but important details. So from the buttons, the crossover changed, the tweeters changed a couple times, and we're really very satisfied with the hardware. And the final stage of this that we've been spending the last week doing is this voicing. So these are all the digital, so the signal processing, the dynamic range tools, the compressor, the equalizer. And you'll be happy to know we got rid of the compressor for the Exos-3. But what was it that we were doing this last week? What led to these 3 midnight sessions before finally getting the final files approved and sent off to the factory for production? And I think that's really kind of bringing you into the lab with our head of acoustics and myself is important, because it kind of makes you understand what goes into these products and why they matter, why you should care. So, there's kind of the first part that you probably have some sense of and most people know, and so between frequency sweeps and pink noise, and there's actually correlated and uncorrelated, the equivalent to stereo and mono pink noise, and you really kind of adjust that frequency response curve to get that flat, or maybe you want it slightly accentuated one way or another, and so you adjust the EQ largely to do that stuff. And so everybody does that, and that's pretty standard. And if you have high quality drivers and amps in your power supply, then you can get that pretty flat and usually distortion free. And here's where Aiwa has an advantage, because again, as you all know, we throw more dollars at the hardware. So that's all great and it's important stuff. But where you spend hours and hours is listening to music and audio and different sounds. You wonder, what do you spend all those hours listening to? Because there's a lot to listen to, and there's a lot of different artifacts that are really, really important. So some of these are just simply being true to the artist's intentions. So take Leonard Cohen. He's got this famous deep voice, and he accentuates it by putting his mouth really accentuated it, putting it really close to the mic, which overemphasizes that bass, the low frequency stuff. Now, that's not really the way that Leonard Cohen would sound if you had listened to him in person, but this is how he would sound in concert. And this is what the recordings sound like. And so we want to be really true to that. And if you listen, this is why we don't just jam up the bass, because it really does impact what that sounds like and making it sound the way that the artist intended. So yeah, another example, and female voices are among the hardest because the range is there and they're very subject to sibilance, so S's can very much sound like lispy if overemphasized. And we had one recording, we agonized over this, Diana Krall, it's a jazz recording, and we agonized, so the 1 to 3K spectrum. This doesn't really get shrill, but if you overemphasize this, the speaker gets a lot louder. It'll make the SPL level jump, but the cost of it is it really sounds like she's shouting. If you listen to the two side by side, the emotion is very different, and it's not as pleasant to listen to, but it's just not, it misses some of the emotional, the point of this whole recording. On the other end, you lose 300 to 500 hertz, and you lose so much of the air, so much of the breath that comes out of some of these powerful singers. You do it right, and you get the detail where you can hear the breathing when they breathe in. I mean, that detail is there. The instruments, you take an instrument like a piano, and all the kind of pianos that we listen to, because the piano music we listen to, because piano is hard. You got a broad range, but it's also almost a percussion instrument. But it's a percussion instrument with a hammer that's covered in felt. So it shouldn't sound like it's plucking. It should sound like a piano with the hammer striking it. And it's kind of in between. But that's what makes it really sound real. And there's other aspects that are the effects that create some of the emotion. There's one recording we have that there's a cello off in the background, and you can really hear it. It sounds, the studio must have been really cavernous, and it's, the impact is that it sounds very forlorn. It's off in the distance, and it's not sharp like the instruments and the voices that are really close to the speaker. And that's the point of this, really, this forlorn kind of this emotional impact that they're trying to achieve. There's a Lhasa song with rain and water, and you can hear her sloshing around and stomping in the water in these puddles. And when it's done right, the detail is such that you just feel like you're there, and you get the whole point of why they bothered with these effects. And then some of them are just bringing you the realism that really puts you right in there. One of the ones we use, not music, it's fireworks, because fireworks are among the most demanding when it comes to the transients, this sharp impact, and they go off. Some are at a distance, some are much closer. When you close your eyes, do you feel like they're shooting up all around you, like you would on 4th of July? Or does it just sound like noise? And then another one that's really important is applause. Again, you never think about it, but the applause when the speaker is really natural and detailed and accurate, applause sounds like applause. You close your eyes, you feel like you're at the concert. And that's a big impact that is just sounding like noise. That's a very demanding, tough thing to reproduce. Now, some of you may be like, who cares? Why does that matter? I mean, your stuff is big and loud, and I bomb around town with it, but, I don't listen nearly as intently as you guys obviously are. What difference does it make? But the truth is, even if you're sitting in a garage or outdoors or wherever, you can hear these details. Pair a couple of the Exos-9s and you'll absolutely hear them, even if you're not really paying attention. And, for the last 5 years, I've been getting kind of a steady stream of love letters about our various products. Hey, we stayed up all night listening to old music, and the party lasted longer. I entertained at the wedding, and it was fantastic. And nobody ever mentions any of these artifacts that I've told you about. But I promise you, these details went into the emotion that motivated those letters. There's no doubt in my mind that when you bring someone into that experience that the artist intended, their impact is enormously enhanced. That's why the artist spent so much effort and time to lug around these interests to find the right studio, concert hall, so on and so forth, because they knew that could provide the impact. And then the right speaker will translate that to you. And that's where you really fall in love with the music, and that's where you send these love letters. And again, you may never say, oh geez, the level of detail was just, you know, terrific on this, the accuracy, but what you felt was absolutely the product of it. And that's what gives us the passion and keeps us going, and had us sitting in the lab till midnight all this week, because we know how much it matters. And I cannot wait for you guys to listen to this and to hear it, and to enhance your experiences. I just, that's really incredibly gratifying at the end of this process. So super excited to get your feedback. Can't wait to get these into your homes. And yeah, it's really been a great adventure, and so glad to have you along with it.